Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. Okay, here we are for another week of fantastic questions. We've got plenty for you today. There's a lot to get through. We'll get to them in just a moment. But before we do, don't forget, the YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, all that sort of thing. But most importantly, I say it's every week. You should know by now. I think you do. Let's be honest. Everybody knows that you should be shopping at KendoStar.com. Everyone is shopping at KendoStar.com, really. Seems to be borne out in the evidence presented to me. But just in case one or two of you out there hasn't quite realised the errors of your ways yet and has shopped somewhere else, you should be shopping at KendoStar.com. It's the best. It's the best place for Kendo equipment. Of course, I would say that, but everyone else says it as well. You can see on our Trustpilot rating, that's a totally independent reviews aggregate, and you've got to have actually bought from us to be able to review on there as well. So, yeah. I'd say it because I own the place, but everyone agrees. So shop at KendoStar.com and keep these videos coming. Right, let's get to the questions. Okay, so first one, this is a long one. It's a long one, and we're still a little bit bunged up, by the way, so if my voice is a bit weird, that would be why. Okay, look at that, we've got almost 3 pages there. Right, okay, I think there's 3 questions here, that's why. So, hi Andy, the title of this Kendo rant question is, am I overthinking things again? And the answer is probably yes. A few weeks ago, someone asked you about their expectations for the Nidan exam. I also plan to take Nidan exam in about 6 months after coming across a document compiled by a UK-based sensei. I found this. Nidan Kirikaishi should be broad, quick, strong, and light, which is different from Shodan. It's important that it should get closer to the real form of Kirikaishi. So, 1, based on your 2 Kirikaishi videos, what sort of speed would you expect someone to perform Kirikaishi at for Nidan level and maybe Sandan 2? If it makes any difference to your answer, I'm 47 and not the fittest of people, but not the least fittest either. Saying that, I've done Kirikaishi with local 7th dans in their mid-50s and they can perform very quick Kirikaishi. Well, they would have over 25 years experience over me, of course. Would you say that the speed you perform at timestamp 1411 in your original Kirikaishi video or 2340 in your newer 0 to Shodan Kirikaishi video is appropriate for Nidan level, or could it be slower? Truthfully, I'm way off those speeds, so I'm more concerned that the Kirikaishi part of the exam rather than the Jigeko or Kata. 2, on a side note, I originally started Kendo in 2001, but I then had a 17-year gap. When I returned, full-on Taya-tari seemed to have been removed from Kirikaishi and replaced with a bit of fist bumping. I know you'll hate that phrase, sorry. In my early days, I was taught to perform Kirikaishi with the intention of knocking the motodachi off their spot to create a gap between us. Both before the Sayu men strikes started, gap between us both, sorry. The original AJKF instruction book seems to promote it this way too, but nowadays it seems a Taya-tari is used in Kirikaishi has lightened a little, although you do demonstrate what seems to be a slightly fuller Taya-tari method in your 0 to Shodan Kirikaishi video. I've visited several different clubs over the past few years, and none of them seem to knock the motodachi off the spot when performing Taya-tari anymore. Do you know if the full Taya-tari was removed from Kirikaishi at some point, and if it was, why? Has it always been advanced fist bumps, and the club I originally attended almost 20 years ago did things slightly differently back then? The same club I'm referring to no longer use the full Taya-tari method nowadays. That's why I'm wondering if the method has changed or whether it's just a particular club that's changed. The BKA website also refers to the need to execute an effective Nidan waza, something which you briefly mentioned a few weeks ago, and other sensei I've spoken to have said it's more of a misunderstanding. What's your take here? I guess the chances are that it's likely to end up performing I guess the chances are that it's likely that I'll end up performing a Nidan or Renzoku waza anyway, purely because circumstances that arrive during the Keiko, like performing a men strike after a weak kote strike, for example. Thanks again for continuing to provide all of this content. It's always appreciated. Great. So a lot to work on there, a lot to get our teeth into. But let's start at the beginning. So, right. So the speed of Kirikaishi. Right, I'm going to address a couple of things. First thing, you sent me the document you were talking about. It's a great document, and it's compiled by a sensei that I respect a great deal and very much look up to. And I think what is meant by this is when it says the Nidan Kirikaishi should be broad, quick, strong, and light, and different from Shodan. It doesn't mean. I don't think it means that the Kirikaishi itself has to be different from the Shodan Kirikaishi. It means that the bar that they've set for the criteria that they're looking at is different from Shodan, right? If you do like this, if you do the Kirikaishi that I show in the videos, exactly like that, you're going to pass Nidan and Sandan, all right? And they're not going to be like, well, no, that's Nidan, that's Sandan Kirikaishi, so you can't pass Nidan. That isn't how it works. As I've described earlier in another video, I did it in one of the feedback videos actually, and then I clipped it out and put it as its own video that I think I called what was it, like we have to stop doing this or something like that. Anyway, I said in that I think of Sandan think of it as 100 points or 100%, okay, 100%, and the requirements for Shodan, Nidan, Sandan are effectively the same, but you have to score 95 to 100 on those criteria to get Sandan. And maybe, I can't remember the thing I said exactly in terms of the numbers, but if you think of it as say 50 to 60% to pass Shodan, and then maybe 70 to 80% to pass Nidan, and then 90 to 100% to pass Sandan. That's the way I look at it, all right? So you've got your criteria of what is correct, or the good level of Kihon basics. And Shodan, Nidan, Sandan are a sort of gauge as to how well you've done them. So if you go into Shodan and you demonstrate at 90% of those criteria, you're still going to pass Shodan, right? So that's sort of what I'd say on that. And I think that's what's kind of been alluded to a little bit in this Nidan Kirikaishi being different from Shodan Kirikaishi. Yeah, if you do the Nidan Kirikaishi in the Shodan exam, you're still going to pass, right? Is essentially what it means. Now, in terms of the speed that you have to do it at, look, for Nidan, I'd want to see some level of fluid Kirikaishi, right? So you don't have to do it at the exact same speed or as fast as I'm demonstrating in those videos necessarily, but I do want to see that it is now Renzoku Uchi, all right? It has to be Renzoku Uchi at least, all right? For Shodan, I'm looking to see if you can do the strikes with Fumikomi and the Sayumen Uchi with Kikentai no Ichi. I'm not that bothered if they're particularly fluid, as long as you know the Kirikaishi rhythm and you're making the strikes with Kikentai no Ichi. Then Nidan, yeah, I'm wanting to see that these strikes are now becoming sort of Renzoku Waza, yeah, and not robotic. Doesn't mean it has to be super fast, okay? So that's what I'd say on that. Now, that does mean, yeah, it has to be somewhat fast, yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be as fast as I'm demonstrating in those videos, but you do need to keep your Kikentai no Ichi in there, all right? So that's what I'd say on that front. The faster the better, but it still has to be right, okay? About the Taya-tari, now this is an interesting point you've raised, all right? It's an interesting point you've raised because, like, I've kind of had a bit of a, I'm just moving stuff around so I can get my book here so I can talk about it properly, but I've had a bit of a thing with Kirikaishi and the Taya-tari thing over the last couple of years, to be honest. Actually, for the most part, right, Kirikaishi is taught with Taya-tari, especially to children or beginners, so that they know, like, they've got a step process where they do the shomen, Taya-tari, sayumen. But as they get more advanced or becoming to adults, the Taya-tari kind of falls away for the benefit of keeping the Kirikaishi fluid. Now I've got the instruction guides here. I've got both the Japanese and the English ones here, and they don't actually mention Taya-tari specifically when it comes to Kirikaishi, but they do show what it looks like. So there's an aspect of it in here. You see, it's interesting that the thing, it shows an example of Taya-tari, okay, but in the right up of the pictures, is the Japanese version, of course, it doesn't actually say do Taya-tari. It just says keep your hips straight and move closer to the opponent. And I can't remember what it says in the English one now, actually. And I'll just see if I can quickly find it. But my issue I've got with it, all right, is that I don't like the idea of, and I was told this as well in the beginning. Yeah, you should do Taya-tari and move the opponent, the receiver, sorry, backwards so you can do it. I don't really like that. I think it kind of, I don't think that's the idea for Taya-tari and Kirikaishi, and it is something that I've heard and probably is still taught. However, yeah, here we are, Kirikaishi. Moving forward from the hips at the collides with the receiver. So in the English version, it just says the word collides with the receiver. It doesn't say do Taya-tari. Okay, it doesn't necessarily say do Taya-tari. And I don't think the pictures necessarily show do Taya-tari either. And I haven't read this properly in a while. I'll probably need to read that again. But the thing is, right, the way I like to do Kirikaishi and the way I teach it in my dojo is actually without Taya-tari these days. I'll be revisiting the Kirikaishi videos soon. I'm doing a new series of videos that's a kind of follow-on from Zero to Shodan. Now, the reason I did include Kirikaishi with Taya-tari in my videos previously is because outside of Japan, it's by far the most common way for people to practice Kirikaishi is to do men, Taya-tari, then Sayu men. So I kept it for that reason. But what you find most people do in Japan, specifically the adults, is it's not really a proper Taya-tari, but you do the men, and you come forward, and the receiver sort of receives on the kote, like on the fist, as you say, kind of like a fist bump as they start to step back and make distance. So there's no proper Taya-tari, and what it means is that the attacker is not encouraged to stop after the shomen strike. So they're not going men, ha, men, but they've got to go men, and they don't get a break. This is better Kirikaishi. It's better for you, all right? So I encourage that more in my dojo. I would encourage that practice more personally, but I know that having a proper Taya-tari is pretty ingrained. And it's not to say that in Japan nobody does it with Taya-tari either, no adults, because there's adult clubs, or there's even police what they called, like teams that do use Taya-tari and Kirikaishi as well. So it depends as well. It's not the same everywhere. The answer is both methods are valid. All right. So either way, whichever one you do at the grading, it's not wrong. Okay, as long as you do it properly. So if you do it the way in the video, that's fine. If you do it the way without the full-on Taya-tari, as long as it's still proper Kirikaishi, then you're fine as well. Okay. Next one, the BK website refers to a need to execute an effective Nidan Waza, something which you briefly mentioned a few weeks ago. Yeah, so this is about, look, I'm going to say something that might be, I don't know if it's going to, upset people or whatever. I don't care really at this point. I sit on grading panels, and I sit on them in the BK is the British Kendo Association. I sit on them in the British Kendo Association. At least I have done up to now. Maybe I won't after this. But I don't really follow the shouldn't say I don't follow. The guidelines I follow are the ones set out by the FIK and more importantly, the AJKF. They're the guidelines that are, I believe, to be most correct. I think this phrase that's on the BKA website that's been up there since I was a beginner at Kendo, that you have to execute an effective Nidan waza in your Nidan exam, I am confident that that is a misinterpretation or open to misinterpretation. It's ridiculous to say that in any grading you have to demonstrate a specific waza, all right? It's ridiculous to say that. That isn't anywhere in any of the ZNKR guidelines. I don't like that thought process at all. You should make the appropriate waza for the opportunity that's presented to you. Okay. Now you're correct. You may indeed have the opportunity to make a Nidan waza or Renzoku waza. In which case, great. But don't beat yourself up if that opportunity doesn't arise. Provided you have displayed the correct level of Kihon or basics that's required to pass the Nidan exam. You know, look, I can't speak for everybody. I can't promise you, right, that some grading panelist is gonna not fail you because you didn't do Nidan waza or Renzoku waza. I can't promise you that because, sorry, we're in the Kendo Wild West, frankly. So anything goes in some ways. But do I think that's right? No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't think they should look at it like that. But that's fine. And I'm afraid telling them that Andy Fisher said that on YouTube won't help you. So, so just be able to do it. And if the chance arrives or the opportunity arrives, do it. That's what I'd say on that. But if someone's out there who sits on grading panels or stuff like that, and you're the sort of person that sits and thinks this person has to show Kote Men or Nidan waza in their Nidan exam, or the worst one I heard is someone told me once that they were told that they had to do Men Kaishido to pass Yondan. What is that about? What? Talk about making stuff up. Anyway, you should be able to do that waza. Of course, you should be able to do that waza if you want to pass Yondan. But to say that you must do it in the grading is a little bit stupid, if you ask me. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole I don't think I should go down any further. Hi, I just started wearing bogu. I'm a bit confused on when to strike during Jigeko. Any tips for timing your strikes? Thanks. Don't get too hung up on whether your strikes are successful or not. Make strikes when you either feel... if you feel afraid and you feel like you want to block, make a strike instead. And watch especially if you're practicing with your sensei or teacher, try to watch for the opportunities that they're giving you and attack. And try to make the best strike that you can. Jigeko is not a fight. It's not a chance to see if you can beat the other person. So don't be concerned at this point if your strikes are not necessarily successful. They will be soon. Okay, with practice. Next, for a 4th, 5th dan promotion exam, is there a minimum number of strikes you have to do? I got the Vanguard original, really love it. Okay, this is a comment from the feedback video that I put up yesterday, I think. No, there isn't a minimum number of strikes that you have to do, but if you don't do any, of course, that's not going to help you. And if you don't make strikes when you should be trying to make an opportunity for a strike, then no. But it's wrong to say this is a bit like that. You have to do a specific waza. It's like the old you have to wait for 10 seconds before you make a strike or something like that. It's all like arbitrary nonsense. You have to approach the keiko and act appropriately to what's unfolding in front of you. You have to try to make a opportunity to strike and then take that opportunity. That might not come up right away, and it might come up quicker, but yeah, there isn't a minimum number of strikes you have to do. Now, what you do have to be wary of is making too many strikes, and the reason I say that, and it's not because you should be limited to how many strikes you make, but if you just if there's a big difference in ability between you and the other candidate, and you kind of rain down strikes on them over and over again, you can struggle sometimes, you know, if it doesn't take much work for you to make an opportunity to strike on someone like that, you might skip the opportunity to show the panel that you understand the process of what you need to be understanding or to be showing at the grading. So that's why you don't want to just beat them up. You know, that's what you've got to be careful of if you've got an opponent that you can suddenly, you know, make a lot of strikes on. Just be careful that you are still demonstrating what needs to be demonstrated at that level. And I'm glad you love the Vanguard original. It's a great box set. I love mine as well. Okay, next one. Hi, Andy. I've just started Kendo age 51 at Manchester. Fantastic. Congratulations. Great club as well. I go there sometimes. Whilst I don't have any real ambitions as far as grades goes, I was just wondering if I applied myself, how long is a reasonable time gaining experience before I can try and pass Shodan? Or should I go through all the Q grades first? No, you don't need to go through all the Q grades first. Probably at Manchester, they'll probably do a couple of in-house Q grades. They usually do. But you don't need to worry about going through them one by one. Just go through the ones that they're giving you and try to get your IQ and then Shodan. You can, if you apply yourself, there's no reason you couldn't get Shodan in, certainly within 2 years. If you really worked hard, you could get it in probably 18 months to even a year, but it'd need a lot of work for you to do that, and it's not so easy for people who have got sort of lives outside of Kendo to do that, actually. But realistically, within 2 years is no problem at all, I don't think. But it's down to you, that one. So, but yeah, I definitely think you could do that. Key is learning to do Fumikomi. You have to be able to do Fumikomi. If you can do Fumikomi and you can do Kirikaishi, you'll get through Shodan, all right? Not so much a question, but an impressed observation. I'm always impressed, so impressed at how our great sensei can pick out things for us to work on while sparring with us, that happens in a fraction of seconds. I can't even remember or see what I did, let alone what I did incorrectly. One day I hope to see a fraction of what he can see. Yeah, I mean, I get this. You know, you practice with the sensei and straight away they pick up and say, yeah, this, or whatever. That comes with experience. It really does. It comes with experience of doing a lot of Kendo over many years, and you do end up being able to do that. But it is pretty amazing how some of these senseis do manage to do it with laser accuracy. Hello, Sensei. I mentioned a big tournament this weekend. I was wondering if I could ask you advice on how to approach it mentally. I don't want to go in with too much confidence because I'll be crushed emotionally if I lose 0-2 in the first round. While thinking I'm not going to say that word. It's a swear word. But I also don't want to have a weak or timid mindset either, because I might not do my best. And I know I wouldn't enter if I wasn't competent. How do I strike a balance between hard confidence and acceptance of a loss? Smaller question. When doing Nate from Cesar, do you make sure the butt remains still, or is it fine that it lifts a bit? See, I struggle to bend neatly with a Dawn Tade in the way, and so can't get my head close enough to the floor if I sit perfectly still. I was wondering if I'm doing it wrong. Okay, good. Okay, so I've talked about this a little bit in the past on this channel about sort of the mental preparation for Shiai. It's tough. It's not easy. It is difficult. I get it. It's something I struggled with a lot throughout my competitive career. And if it's something that I'd kind of got to grips with a bit earlier, I might have done a lot better in my time. I don't know. Who knows? But it is definitely something that that I struggled with, and it's definitely something that cost me dearly in many tournaments. Because I struggled with this exact same thing as well. I think I had the misunderstanding for a long time that you had to be what you lacked in ability, you could make up in confidence. It doesn't quite work like that. Now, confidence is indeed important. It's very important. You have to go in to try and win. But if you're overconfident, and you don't respect your own ability, or more importantly, the ability of your opponent, I think is the bigger one, then it ends in a way you don't really want it to. So what you have to do is you have to strike that balance. You have to be confident, but what you also have to do is you have to take each match as it comes. All right, you have to take each match as it comes. You can't go in there and be like, right, I'm going to beast this day. I'm just going to batter everyone. You can't do that. It doesn't work like it does. I guess it does for some people, but I haven't really seen it either. I mean, I've some of my close friends are very, very successful competitors in Japan and outside of Japan too. And they always seem to do better when they were on a sort of in a calmer mood. If they went out there and were like, right, I'm going to smash this today, then they tended to sort of, something got in the way and they were unable to move freely. And the same happened to me. So at the end of the day, I think what you have to do is you have to go in and say, okay, well, I'm going to do my best, give it my best, and try to take each match as it comes, try my best to win each match. And if you lose, then you lose. That's life. Someone has to lose, yeah, in the Shinai. So, yeah, and as crushing emotionally as that can be, you have to kind of take it on the chin, really, and use it to press forward, try to examine what it was that you did wrong, and try and do better. But you have to accept that losing in the first round is a genuine, realistic possibility, especially you don't know who you're up against. It could be anyone. So, you never want to be so confident that, like, right, I'm going to go and smash this whole Taikai. Doesn't work. Like that. I've tried it a lot. I wish I'd learned sooner. So yeah, about doing day from Cesar. I think that's a good question as well. I think it's probably anatomically impossible to keep your butt completely on the ground when you do zare, especially when you've got a do and tare on. I don't think it's in the book. Is it in the book? Let's have a look if it's in the book. It's how to wear the dogi and how to put on the bogu. There's a standing nay. Let's have a look. Is that it? Okay, yeah. Okay, so look, there we go. We've got a good example there, actually, here. Yeah, you can see. Can you see where his actual butt is? His backside, where it actually is. It does raise a little bit. Now, it doesn't go up in the air, but what's important is this. His back is straight. His back is straight, okay? His back is straight, okay? So even if it lifts up slightly, which it has to, yeah? But the back and the neck is straight, this way, okay? Next one. I was reading a blog article, okay, I know this article, that was saying that it's important to know your Kendo lineage, and at the very least, it's quite interesting. I've tracked down that my teacher's teacher is Shinji Fukumoto, who is quite a famous sensei. Yes, he is. So I figure it would be pretty easy to go further down the rabbit hole and track down Fukumoto sensei and the sensei before that. Is there any sort of record of this sort of thing, or is it only an oral record? Or if only oral records exist, it stands that these lineages will be lost over time rather quickly, as it only takes one person to not ask who their teacher's teacher was to break the chain. All right. This is an interesting one. This is where Kendo differs in a lot of ways to Kenjutsu, it's slightly retained in that it's not that it's completely ignored. But I believe in Kenjutsu, you have like a proper like pedigree, of things like with scrolls handed down and all these sort of things. I don't really know. I'm not that interested in it. I know the article. I know the author of the article. He's a very good friend of mine. Love you, George, if you're out there. I know you watch these sometimes. I understand what George is saying in this article, and I partly agree with it. And I understand why he is of the point of view he is on it with the situation he is in, because he is in that sort of environment, especially in Japan, where you know, especially in educational settings or in other settings as well, perhaps, where you can, if someone comes to visit your dojo, you can say, okay, well, where do you normally practice? And they'll say such a place, and you say, okay, so this sensei, right? And yes, okay, fine. It's not really like that for everyone, especially outside of Japan. I guess it is, though, if you think about it, it is, because you say you're at such and such dojo, it means you've got a specific sensei, and that's probably more relevant than in Japan, actually. But I mean, it's hard for me to answer because I don't come from that sort of traditional kind of kendo background. I've got a bit of a weird opinion on it. I've learned kendo from many, many different sensei, and some that I've sort of considered to be, do my best to very closely follow their teaching. However, I have not sort of, I don't have someone that's like, that's my sensei. And, there's people who I say, oh, my sensei in this place, when I lived there, this person was like my sensei, the sensei at my dojo that I was a member of, for example. Yeah, but I wouldn't go around telling anybody that person was my sensei, because I don't think that would be fair to him for me to kind of attach myself to him without his knowledge, in a way. I see it a lot, and I don't really like it. I think it's kind of in a bit bad taste where you have like a famous sensei that's like visited overseas, and they might have visited several times, and people have met them or practiced with them a few times, or every time they come, maybe they come every year, whatever, and they go, oh, that person's my sensei, and like that sensei doesn't give that person like 2 seconds thought when they're not in their presence. Like, I'm not necessarily saying that a sensei has to, but it's like my sort of thing on it, I guess, is difficult. I'm gonna upset people, but the sensei-student relationship is a two-way thing, right? So for me to go around essentially name dropping a sensei to say they're my sensei, as if it gives me some sort of credence or like credibility, is kind of, I just think it's a little bit poor taste. I don't like it, and I don't do it. So that's why you won't hear me on here say, oh, my sensei is this person or that person. I might talk about, my sensei when I lived in Kyoto and Kumamoto or something like that. But I didn't really have that sort of journey. I did when I lived in Kyoto, I did, because I was a member of the local dojo that I always went to. When I lived in Kumamoto, I didn't really have a sensei because I was a member of my company's dojo when it existed. And then I was, and we didn't have a sensei. We were like a keiko group. And we had like, and I practiced with lots of different senseis. Same when I moved to Fukuoka. It was the same then, and it's just I couldn't tell you what my kendo lineage is or whatever, because I don't think of it like that. I don't think of there's so I've been very heavily influenced by probably a small number of senseis, some of them very, very famous. But for me to say that person's my sensei I think it's a bit unfair to them for me to sort of attach myself to them, sort of with no regard to what they think about it. They probably don't think of me as their student, they just think of me as some guy that they met or meet sometimes, so it's a bit weird. Now if I'd stayed, and of course there's people like my first ever teacher, I still think of him as my sensei and stuff like that. But it's not quite the same, is it? Because of the situation that we're in the West, it's not quite the same as sort of it would be in Japan, because it's a different cultural experience doing kendo. So yeah, I don't. if I meet someone new, yeah, I'll ask where they practice and I'll ask who the teacher is. And I think that's the point that George is making in the article, because it gives you some way of profiling that person and what kind of person they are. If we know not what kind of person they are, but what kind of attitude they probably have to Kendo. If I know they're from whatever dojo with whatever sensei, and I happen to know that sensei or know of that sensei, then yeah, I'll have some sort of impression of what, you know, what I can expect from them. And in that regard, it is important. But I'd never ask them who their teacher's teacher is and who their teacher was and all that. I'm not sort of at that point where I care enough about that. So yeah, but all I'm saying is I am very wary of people who attach themselves to senseis that like visit, and probably that sort of, like I say, I think the sort of sensei student relationship is two-way, and I think a lot of people want to attach themselves to a certain sensei when that what can I say, relationship isn't necessarily reciprocated on the sensei's side, and often the person that's saying it might not even realize that because they don't really get how it works. But you see it a lot, and I don't like it, so I try to avoid it. Excuse me. Right. Hi, Fish Sensei. I recently started Kendo about a month ago and was wondering if you could give me advice on swinging the Shinai properly. I've been having a hard time only using my left arm for swinging while my right hand is supposed to be along for the ride. My bad habit is to use my right hand instead. Yep. I think it comes from having played a lot of racket sports when I was younger. Doubt it. Do you know of any exercise I can do that still involves both arms so I have the correct movement but focuses power from the left? Thank you for creating the platform. It's really lit my Kendo spark and I look forward to the long journey ahead. Great. That's fantastic. Welcome to Kendo. Listen, what you are experiencing is the same thing that literally everybody else experiences. It's not because of your racket sports. I don't think everybody struggles with this. Trust me. Nobody walks into the dojo and you give them a Shinai and you say, right, swing the Shinai like this and use your left hand. Nobody swings it with the left hand for the first while. All right. Now, how quick you can get over that is different for everybody, but it's not unique to you. It's perfectly normal. So it's good that you're recognizing it. The way I think of it, right, is when you make a strike with the Shinai, you have to generate a certain amount of force in the Kensen, in the tip of the Shinai. And you need to do that without using your muscular power. Because if you do that with just your muscles to bash, you're going to bust up your Shinai, you're going to hurt the other person. What you have to do is you have to generate force in the Shinai by swinging it properly from the left hand. You do that because you're swinging it essentially with your left hand because it's the furthest point away from the Kensen, the tip of the Shinai. And that's what generates the force as you swing it. Whereas if you were swinging it with the fulcrum of the swing higher up the Shinai, where the right hand is, you're not going to generate that force, all right? And you're not going to be able to properly use the Shinai. The Shinai needs to flex from the Kensen right to the Tsukagashira. That's the butt of the hilt, all right? It has to flex that whole length. So if you're getting involved by holding the right hand at the tsuba, and that's where you're swinging it from, it's only going to flex from the Kensen to the tsuba. That's how you break Shinai, by the way. Excuse me. So try to keep that in mind. Try to swing the Shinai in a circular motion. And after that, the only thing you can do is practice. Just practice, unfortunately. Takes time, takes patience. And when you come later on, you get into bogu. It's easier to fix when you're in bogu, actually, if I'm honest with you. It's easier to fix when you're in bogu, but the cure is not a very nice one. It's like a lot of Kirikaishi and uchikomi. And then you can't feel your arms, so you don't really have the energy to put power in with your right hand. It's tough. Hi Andy, probably not an uncommon problem, but how can I improve my door waza? As a fairly tall guy, 190 centimeters, people usually attack me from way too close distance, successfully pull off any kaishu or nukido. Of course, I could just rely on men and kote, but I want to properly include all waza from my repertoire. I'm not going to name drop him, but a very, very successful friend of mine, competitively successful friend of mine, is probably taller than you, and he has got exceptionally good door waza. Look, it's not necessarily that they're attacking you from a too close distance to successfully pull off Kaishi or Nukido. You have to control the distance better a bit yourself. You need to make it so they only really have the option to attack your men and not your kote, because they're going to be coming for your kote if they can help it, if they can, because it's easier to hit the men. And then you need to be faster with your Kaishi, okay? Because you can pull off Kaishido from pretty close distance. If they're at the thing is this is the thing, right? If they're at the distance where they're going to hit your men with the right part of the Datotsubu of the Shinai, right? Then you've got space to do Kaishido. Because the point at which you're doing the Kaishido is at the point at which their men would land, isn't it? Yeah? So even if they're quite close, unless they're hitting you with like the door of the Shinai, in which case it's not men anyway, is it? Then you can say there's not enough room to do Kaishido. So what it is that you probably just need a little bit more seme, so that you're in control of the timing of their strike, and your Kaishi itself needs to be fast. And probably you need to drop your knees a little bit as you make the strike so that you hit on target. All right, don't drop your posture. What you might have the tendency to do is lean forward, and that destroys your distance. That if you lean forward as you hit Dole, that brings you closer to them, and you don't have the space to hit it. All right, I'm sure you can do it. Hi Andy, how are you? I'm good, thank you. Good to hear. Great, it's a great conversation. What advice would you give someone who's aspiring to compete internationally? It depends. Depends. If I'm honest with you, if you're talking about competing internationally, that means competing in the World Championships to me. That means you want to stand in the same shiaijo as the Japanese national team. So for all intents and purposes, you need to practice Kendo in a way as close to a professional would as you possibly can. You have to live, breathe and sleep it. Is that the right order? Don't know. But every action you take that's obviously not connected to your professional life. I don't know what you do for a job, but you'll need money. You'll definitely need money. You know, everything outside of your professional sort of life and probably your family life needs to be centered around improving your Kendo. And doing what you need to do to compete with those players on the international stage. It's not good enough to just... I don't know. I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if it's the right advice or not. I don't think it's good enough. At least for me, it wasn't, to just compete. It's not good enough to just go to the tournament. You have to try and win the matches. Right? So you have to do your best to be the best Kendoka you can and the most effective Kendoka you can. Try as hard as you possibly can. And that's it. That's the only advice I would give. Hi Sensei, so I just purchased an awesome premium Shinai shaver from KendoStar, and I was wondering if there are any good resources on how to use it properly. I'd rather not damage my brand new KendoStar Shinai. Thanks. Okay, good. Yeah, I've got one here. I prepared for this. This one is my wife's one. It's this one, isn't it? Yeah, this one. Okay, so it's a tool. It's got these sort of different sides. What you find is there's like a sharper side there, little blade. That's for like really shaving the bits that are properly, like if you've got like a deep splinter. Obviously, Shinai's broken. This isn't going to help you. But what you can do is you can use the corners of this flat edge. Like if it's just a little bit like splintered, you can rub that corner against it first, right? And that should duff off some of the splinters. If they're a bit too deep, you can carve into the Shinai a bit with that blade there, right? That'll help. And then what you'll see as well, you've got these rounded ones. They're used to keep the rounded edge of the staves. All right, so you can use that bit there to put the side of the stave in if you want to get that rounded edge, or on the top of it where it's less rounded but still curved like that. That's what that's for. All right, That's basically it. Okay. I know it looks a little bit complicated, but it's not. All right. That's basically how you use it. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I'll try and make a video about it at some point when I get a minute, because I think it's a good question that probably a lot of people have. So that's that. Okay, we're at the last one. Okay, hi, hello, Sensei. Hope you are well. Yes, I know you mentioned in the last Kendo feedback video about not keeping your knees too bent. I was hoping for elaboration on the balance between not enough and too much. Lastly, we've had a Kendo guy who's mildly pigeon-toed. What's your best advice on how to fully correct it? All right. If I understand pigeon-toed, it means that the feet are pointed in. That's interesting. Right, the knees, yeah, the guy in the video his knees were just too bent, and it's common with a lot of newer Kendoka. They make this sort of boxing type stance where they can't properly use Suriashi to glide. Your right leg should be pretty much straight, but not locked. Your left leg should be very slightly, I mean, it's almost straight as well, but it should have enough flex in it to be able to bend and straighten as and when you need it, and again, not locked. All right, I guess my left knee is usually slightly bent, slightly, but not like a boxer would be. Okay, because I need to be pushing forward, not upwards or downwards. Okay, it's difficult to elaborate on over the internet, of course, but yeah. That's that. If you go back and look at some of the videos I've done about how to do kamae, I think I talk about it a bit more in that. And about the pigeon-toed person, like I say, yeah, I assume you mean that like the feet are that way rather than that like they've got like feet like that. In which case, I don't know. It strikes me as it might not be the biggest disadvantage you might think of, because the biggest problem most beginners have is being the opposite, where the feet are that way. Is that right? Or is that pigeon-toed? I don't know. If their feet are sort of naturally that way, then, you know, yeah, they're going to have to focus on trying to straighten them a bit, but it's better than them being this way. Let's put it that way. All right. But the only way to fix it is practice. And it's the same as advice for someone that stands like that. And it takes a long time, and it's hard and a lot of concentration. And if you don't actively try and fix it at every keiko, it doesn't get better. And if you don't keep concentrating it gets worse. So yeah, it's not a great answer for you, I'm afraid, but they've just got to keep practicing and keep concentrating on trying to keep their left foot straight. Okay. That's it. We got to the end. Thank you for joining me all the way. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Shop at KendoStar. See you next time. Bye-bye.